The marketplace was loud, full of colors and strange voices. Bright lights floated in the air, showing the way through stalls made of metal and glass. Merchants shouted in alien tongues, offering glowing fruits, shining stones, and gadgets that hummed with strange energy. Humans were rare here, only a handful walking among tall and scaled creatures, feathered traders and shadowy buyers with too many eyes. David, a human engineer working on the colony's machines, walked carefully through the busy street. He kept his head low. Humans were tolerated in this part of the galaxy, but they were not trusted. He was only here to buy parts for his broken water recycler. He didn't want trouble. He didn't want eyes on him, but trouble found him anyway. He felt a sudden tug on his shirt. At first he thought it was a pickpocket, some alien thief trying to steal his credits. He spun around quickly, ready to grab a hand. But what he saw froze him in place. A small alien girl stood there, no older than 7 in human years. Her skin was pale with faint silver lines running across it, glowing like rivers of light. Her big eyes shimmered with colors that shifted between blue and purple. She was thin, too thin, and her clothes were torn and dirty. She looked up at him with those strange, shining eyes, and then in a soft, shaky voice she whispered words in broken English. "Can I call you Dad?" David blinked, not sure if he heard right. His heart skipped. Around them, the noisy marketplace seemed to grow quiet, or maybe his mind was drowning out the sound. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice low. The girl's small hands held onto his shirt tightly like she was afraid he would walk away. Her lips trembled and her eyes grew wet. "Dad," she whispered again, almost begging. People around them began to stare. Alien merchants stopped calling out prices. A feathered trader tilted his head curiously. A scaled guard frowned and whispered something to another. David felt the air around him grow heavy. Why was this girl asking him this? Why in the middle of a crowded market? And why him, out of all people? David's first thought was to shake her off, to tell her she made a mistake. But something inside him wouldn't let him. Her hands were too small, too desperate. The way she clung to him reminded him of a child reaching for safety. He crouched down, keeping his voice soft. "Where are your parents?" he asked. Her eyes grew sad. "No parents," she said slowly, trying to form the words. "Alone." A cold feeling spread through his chest. He looked around. People were whispering now, pointing at the girl. He caught the word outcast spoken in one alien tongue. Another muttered, "Cursed blood." David's gut told him this was dangerous. The girl suddenly pressed closer, almost hiding behind him. "Please," she said. "Take me home, Dad." His mind spun. He didn't know this child. He didn't know her kind. But something deep inside him, something human, screamed at him not to push her away. She was scared, abandoned, and for some reason she had chosen him. A shadow fell across them. David looked up to see 2 alien guards moving through the crowd. They were tall, their armor black with glowing red marks, their eyes narrow and sharp. The crowd parted for them like water. David's heart began to pound. The girl trembled and gripped his shirt tighter. The guards were looking for someone, and David already knew who. For the first time since he arrived in this strange market, David felt like the center of attention. He wanted to run, but the girl was clinging to him. He wanted to shout, but his throat was dry. Her small voice broke through the noise. "Dad, don't leave me." Those words hit him harder than he expected. They pulled at something buried in his chest, something he thought he had locked away years ago. Memories of a home far from here, memories of loss. The guards were getting closer. The crowd waited, whispering, pointing. The little girl's glowing eyes stared up at him, full of fear and hope. And in that moment, David knew one thing, whatever was happening. His life had just changed. Forever. The guards marched closer, their heavy boots echoing against the metal floor of the market. David's heart raced as the little alien girl pressed tighter against his side. Her glowing eyes darted nervously, and he could feel her trembling through his shirt. He didn't know why she had chosen him. He didn't know why she called him Dad. But he knew one thing. If the guards reached them, it would be bad. Very bad. David grabbed her small hand and pulled her toward a narrow alley between 2 stalls. She stumbled at first, but then clung to him as he guided her quickly away from the open street. Behind them, he heard the guards shout something in their alien language, the words sharp and angry. The crowd murmured, but no one stopped the guards. David didn't stop until they were hidden in the shadows of the alley. He crouched down, looking at her closely. "Tell me what's going on," he whispered. "Why are they after you?" The girl's lip trembled. She glanced back at the main street, then looked at him with wide eyes. "They want me," she said in broken words. Because my blood, David frowned. Your blood? What do you mean? She lifted her sleeve with shaky fingers. Underneath her pale skin, faint silver lines glowed, running like veins of light. They pulsed gently as if alive. David had seen many aliens in his years out here, but never something like this, they say. Cursed, the girl whispered. Dangerous. Not wanted. Her voice broke on the last word. David felt a strange mix of anger and pity rise inside him. She couldn't have been more than a child, yet already marked as something unwanted. And your parents? He asked softly, her head lowered. Gone, she said. Her voice was so quiet he almost missed it. Killed. Long ago, David's chest tightened. He thought of Earth, of children who lost their families in wars and disasters. He thought of the faces of kids he had seen begging on streets when he was younger. And now, here was another but not human, an alien child with glowing blood who had no one. She looked up suddenly, her eyes wet but firm. I need Dad, you. Good, you human. Not like them. She pointed toward the street where the guards had been. David shook his head slowly. Kid, you don't even know me. But the way she looked at him, desperate yet hopeful, made it hard to argue. She wasn't choosing with logic. She was choosing with instinct. And somehow she had decided he was safe. Before he could answer, the sound of heavy boots grew louder. The guards were searching the alleys now. David cursed under his breath and grabbed her hand again. Come on, he whispered. They slipped deeper into the narrow backways, moving between crates, discarded parts, and trash piles. The girl's small feet made almost no sound. David kept checking over his shoulder. But the glowing lines on her skin made her easy to spot even in the dark. He quickly took off his worn jacket and wrapped it around her. Keep it tight, he said. Hide the light. She nodded, pulling the fabric around her small body. Finally, they reached an old storage room at the edge of the market. The door creaked, but it opened, and David pulled her inside. Dust filled the air and broken machines sat in the corners. It was quiet here, away from the busy streets. David leaned against the wall, breathing hard. The girl sat down on the floor, hugging her knees. For a long moment, they just listened for boots, for shouts, for anything, but only silence came. David finally asked, What's your name? She hesitated, then whispered, Lyra. Lyra, David repeated. All right. Lyra, why me? Out of everyone in that market, why did you grab me? She looked up, her glowing eyes reflecting the dim light. Because humans kind, she said slowly. Stories say humans protect, not leave. David blinked. Stories? He had no idea aliens even told stories about humans. On most worlds, humans were treated as weak, strange, or outsiders. But here this little girl believed humans were different, safe. Is that why you called me Dad? He asked quietly. She nodded, clutching his jacket tighter. Need Dad, need family. No family left. Her voice cracked again. If I say Dad, maybe real. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He wasn't a father. He had no children. Years ago, he had thought about starting a family, but life had taken him elsewhere. Now this fragile alien child was looking at him like he was all she had left in the universe. David closed his eyes for a moment, trying to think. He could walk away. Leave her. Let the guards take her. It wasn't his problem. But when he opened his eyes again, Lyra was still there, small and fragile, with glowing lines hidden under his jacket. And he knew he couldn't walk away. Before he could say anything, a loud crash echoed outside the door. Heavy boots scraped against the ground. The guards were close. Lyra gasped and clung to him again. Dad, she whispered urgently. Don't let them take me. David clenched his jaw. He didn't know how he would protect her. He didn't know why fate had thrown her into his path. But deep down he already knew one thing: he wasn't going to let her go. Not now. Not ever. The storage room was dark, but not dark enough. A thin line of light slipped through the cracks in the door. Dust floated in the air, glowing faintly in that beam. David stood still, holding his breath, his ears straining for every sound outside. Then he heard it, the heavy steps of armored boots. Slow. Careful. Searching. Lyra clutched his jacket tighter around her small frame. Her glowing lines were hidden, but her trembling wasn't. She pressed herself against his side, her wide eyes fixed on the door. Stay quiet, David whispered, his voice barely a breath. The boots stopped right outside. For a moment there was silence, then the sound of alien voices. Low, sharp, speaking in a tongue David couldn't understand. One word repeated, harsh and angry. Outcast, Lyra winced. She understood. David didn't need a translation to know they were talking about her. A loud bang shook the room as a fist slammed against the door. David jumped, his heart pounding. Another bang followed, louder this time. The guards were testing the old door. If they pushed harder, it wouldn't hold. David looked around the room quickly. Broken machines. Old crates, dust, nothing useful. He had no weapon, no plan. Just his hands and his will. He crouched beside Lyra. "Listen to me," he said firmly, his eyes locking on hers. "If they get in, I want you to hide. Crawl under those crates and don't move. Do you understand?" Lyra shook her head violently. "No, don't leave me," she whispered, her voice breaking. David swallowed hard. He didn't want to leave her either. But if it came down to it, he'd rather take the hit than let them drag her away. The banging stopped. Silence again. Then a scraping sound, metal against metal. David's stomach turned cold. They were unlocking the door. The old hinges squealed as the door swung open. Light flooded in, cutting through the dust. 2 alien guards stepped inside. They were tall, their black armor shining with red lines that pulsed like fire. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their sharp eyes glowed faintly through the visor slits. They scanned the room slowly, their weapons humming with deadly energy. David's hand tightened into a fist. He stood up, moving in front of Lyra, blocking their view of her small body. He tried to keep his voice steady. "This place is empty," he said. "Just junk." One guard tilted his head, studying him. The other barked something in their alien language. The sound was harsh, like a knife cutting through air. David understood the meaning without knowing the words. They wanted him to step aside. They wanted to see behind him. He didn't move. The first guard took a step closer. His shadow fell over David. The humming of his weapon grew louder. Lyra's small hand clutched the back of David's shirt. He could feel her shaking. "Human." The guard hissed in broken English. "Move." David shook his head slowly. His throat was dry, but his words came out clear. "No," the second guard snarled. His weapon crackled, bright energy dancing across its surface. The glow lit up the room, casting sharp shadows. David's heart hammered in his chest. He had no way to fight them. One strike from that weapon and he'd be dead. But still, he stood there, refusing to move. The guards exchanged a quick look. Then the first one raised his weapon higher. Lyra gasped. "Dad!" She cried out louder than she meant to. The word echoed in the room, bouncing off the walls. Both guards froze. Their glowing eyes snapped toward David and then to the child hiding behind him. A silence fell, thick and dangerous. One guard growled something in his tongue, sharp and fast. The word bloodline slipped out, one of the few David understood. The second guard hissed, stepping forward. "Give! The girl!" His broken English cracked like thunder. David's jaw tightened. His body trembled, not from fear but from anger. He looked them dead in the eye. "No," he said again, louder this time. The guards raised their weapons in unison. For a moment, time felt frozen. David knew he couldn't win in a fight. He knew he was standing between armored killers and a helpless child. Logic screamed at him to surrender, to save himself. But when Lyra's tiny voice whispered again, "Don't leave me, Dad," something inside him broke free. He grabbed the nearest crate and shoved it forward, knocking one guard off balance. The second shouted in surprise, firing his weapon, but the blast missed, slamming into the wall and showering sparks. "Run!" David yelled, pulling Lyra toward the back of the room. There was a small ventilation shaft just big enough for a child. Lyra hesitated, fear in her eyes. "Go," David shouted. "I'll be right behind you." The guards roared, recovering fast. One swung his weapon at David, who ducked just in time. The air burned hot as the blast grazed past him. Lyra crawled into the shaft, her small body disappearing into the dark tunnel. David turned back to the guards, his chest heaving. He had bought her a few seconds, but now, standing alone against them, he realized the truth. This was only the beginning. The moment Lyra disappeared into the ventilation shaft, David felt both relief and fear. She was safe for the moment, but now all the guards' focus was on him. One of them swung a heavy fist, catching David in the shoulder. Pain exploded through him, sending him stumbling back. The other aimed his weapon, the crackle of energy filling the room. David grabbed another crate and hurled it. The blast struck the crate mid-air, exploding into sparks and burning metal. Smoke filled the storage room, giving David the chance he needed. He dropped low and rolled toward the shaft. He forced his body inside, scraping his arms on the narrow edges. The space was too small for the armored guards to follow quickly. "Go, Lyra," he shouted, his voice echoing in the tunnel. Her small figure scrambled ahead of him. The shaft shook as the guards slammed at the outside, trying to break through. Sparks of energy lit up behind David, close enough to sear the air. They crawled as fast as they could until the shaft dropped into another alley. David hit the ground hard, dust rising around him. He reached up and caught Lyra as she slid down after him. The alley was dark, but not empty. The neon lights of the city flickered above, casting sickly colors over metal walls and trash piles. The sounds of the market were louder now, but so were the shouts of the guards behind them. "They're coming," David muttered, pulling Lyra to her feet. She clung to his hand as they ran. The city around them was a maze, tall towers of alien steel, bridges crisscrossing above, streets filled with glowing signs and strange smells. Alien faces turned to watch them sprint past, some curious, some fearful, none willing to help. "Dad," Lyra cried, tugging his hand toward a narrow stairway. David didn't question her. They darted up the steps, weaving between hanging wires and dripping pipes. The stairs opened onto a crowded sky bridge. Alien merchants pushed carts loaded with goods, and hovering drones buzzed overhead. David shoved through the crowd, dragging Lyra with him. Behind, the sound of armored boots grew louder. The guards had split up, some chasing from below, others climbing higher. "Keep moving," David barked. Lyra's small legs struggled to keep up, but she didn't let go of his hand. Her glowing eyes darted everywhere, searching for escape. A drone swooped low, scanning the crowd. David saw its red beam sweep across faces. He yanked Lyra down, ducking behind a cart piled with alien fruit. The merchant squawked angrily, but David ignored him. The drone hovered closer. Lyra pressed her face into his chest, hiding. David grabbed one of the fruits, a round glowing orb, and hurled it at the drone. It struck with a crack, knocking the machine off balance. Sparks flew as it crashed into the ground. The crowd screamed and scattered, giving away their hiding place. "There!" one of the guards roared from across the bridge. Blaster fire streaked through the air, scorching the walls. David ducked low and ran, pulling Lyra toward the end of the bridge. Ahead, a set of market stalls lined the path. The smell of cooked meat and burning oils hit his nose. They darted into the stalls, weaving between tables of steaming food and glowing drinks. The stall keepers shouted, some throwing objects at David as he passed. But the confusion slowed the guards behind them. "Dad?" Lyra panted, pointing toward a narrow gap between two buildings. David pushed through, and they found themselves in another alley. The sounds of the market faded behind them, replaced by the hum of machinery. Pipes lined the walls, dripping with strange liquids. For a brief moment it was quiet. David pressed his back against the wall, breathing hard. His chest burned, his legs ached, but he didn't stop. Lyra leaned against him, her face pale. "They'd never stop," she whispered. David brushed her hair back gently. "As long as you're with me, I won't let them take you." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but also something else, trust. Before he could say more, a shadow fell across the alley. A guard stepped into view, weapon raised. David's stomach dropped. He grabbed Lyra and pulled her behind a large pipe as the blast struck the wall, shaking the ground. He scanned the alley quickly. There, a ladder leading upward, disappearing into the city's endless levels. "Up!" he shouted, boosting Lyra onto the ladder. She climbed fast, her small hands gripping each rung tightly. David followed, the sound of blaster fire chasing them upward. Sparks rained down as shots hit the ladder. They reached the rooftop, a wide platform with a view of the sprawling alien city. Neon towers rose into the foggy sky. Ships roared overhead, their engines shaking the ground. David pulled Lyra close, scanning the rooftops. More guards were climbing up from the other side. "Dad?" Lyra whispered, her voice shaking. "Where do we go?" David stared at the glowing ships in the distance, then back at the approaching guards. His mind raced. There was no safe place left in the open streets. But he knew one thing. They couldn't stop. He took her hand firmly. "We run, and we don't look back." Together they sprinted across the rooftop as the guards closed in, their weapons lighting the foggy sky. The rooftop escape had bought them time, but not safety. David and Lyra kept moving until the neon lights of the main city were behind them. They crossed bridges, climbed down old stairways, and slipped into the lower levels of the alien metropolis, where the air was thick with smoke and the streets were narrow. Finally, They reached a forgotten corner, a workshop long abandoned. Its metal walls rusting, its windows cracked. David pushed the door open and guided Lyra inside. "Sit," he said gently. His own legs trembled from running, but his eyes stayed sharp, watching the doorway. Lyra sat on an old crate, hugging her knees. Her glowing eyes looked tired but still alert. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the distant hum of engines and the dripping of pipes outside. David knelt in front of her. "Lyra," he said softly, "you need to tell me everything. Why are they after you? Why are you different?" Her lips trembled. She looked away as if afraid that speaking the truth would make things worse. "I can't help you if I don't understand," David said firmly. "Please tell me." At last she lifted her sleeve again. The faint silver lines under her skin pulsed like living light. She touched them with small fingers. "This is not normal," she whispered. "Not for my kind, my blood." "Is wrong," David frowned. "Wrong? It doesn't look wrong to me. It looks—" He searched for the right word. "Special," she gave a small, broken laugh. "They don't say special. They say cursed." Her voice grew quiet, almost a whisper. "Long ago, my father fought the council. He told them truth. He said they lied to people. He said they were cruel. They killed him." David's chest tightened. He could picture it. A man standing against powerful rulers, speaking truths they didn't want to hear and paying the price. "And your mother?" he asked softly. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "She tried to protect me, but she was taken. I never saw her again." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I ran, I hid. But they always find me. Because of my blood." David's brows furrowed. "What about your blood makes them chase you?" Lyra hesitated, then whispered, "My father's blood. His power flows in me. These lines, this glow, it means I can carry his gift." David tilted his head. "What gift?" She looked down, her hands trembling. "The gift of voice. I can speak truth that cannot be broken." David blinked. "You mean, when you speak, people believe you?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Not just believe. They cannot deny. My words bind. Like law. Like stone." The weight of her words hit him like a shockwave. No wonder the council wanted her gone. A child who could speak undeniable truth. She was a threat to every lie, every secret they held. David sat back, running a hand through his hair. He understood now why the guards had called her cursed blood. To rulers built on control and fear, someone like Lyra was dangerous beyond measure. Lyra's voice shook as she whispered, "That is why they want to kill me. If I live, I can speak. And if I speak, they fall." David's heart pounded. For a long moment, he said nothing. He just looked at her, this fragile child carrying a weight bigger than her small shoulders could hold. Finally, he reached out and placed a steady hand on hers. "Listen to me," he said. "You're not cursed. You're not wrong. You're strong, stronger than they'll ever admit." Lyra sniffled, blinking up at him. "You believe that?" "I do," David said firmly. "And if they're afraid of you, that means you're worth protecting." Her eyes shimmered, but this time not only with fear. For the first time, there was a spark of hope. She whispered, "Dad, if I stay with you, will you protect me?" David didn't hesitate. "Yes. As long as I'm breathing, no one will take you." Her small fingers curled into his hand. For the first time, she smiled. A tiny, fragile smile. But the moment of peace didn't last. Outside the cracked window, a flicker of red light swept across the wall. The hum of drones filled the air. David cursed under his breath. The council wasn't giving up. They were still hunting. He grabbed Lyra and pulled her to her feet. "We can't stay here. They've tracked us again." Her face fell, fear rushing back. "Where do we go?" David looked out into the smoky streets, then back at her glowing eyes. "Somewhere they can't reach. But first," he tightened his grip on her small hand, "we need to survive the night." Outside, heavy boots echoed in the distance, drawing closer. The hunt wasn't over. It was only beginning. The night air in the lower city was thick with smoke and shadows. David and Lyra moved quickly through narrow streets, their footsteps echoing on rusted metal. Every few moments, David glanced back, expecting to see armored guards stepping out of the fog. They reached a broken stairwell that led into the ruins of an old factory. David guided Lyra inside, and together they climbed over fallen beams and rusted machines until they found a small corner hidden from sight. Lyra sat down, hugging her knees. Her glowing eyes flickered faintly under the dim light. David crouched beside her, his chest heaving from the run. For a long while, neither spoke. The silence pressed heavy on them. Finally, Lyra whispered, "They won't stop. They will keep coming. You should leave me." David froze. "What did you say?" "You should go," Lyra said softly, her voice breaking. "If you stay with me, they will kill you. I don't want you to die because of me." David sat back against the wall, his hand running through his messy hair. Part of him wanted to agree. She wasn't wrong. Every step they took together dragged him deeper into danger. Alone, maybe he could slip away. Alone, maybe he could survive. But when he looked at her, small, tired, trembling in the cold, he knew the truth. Leaving her wasn't survival. It was betrayal. Still, the fear gnawed at him. His mind whispered cruel thoughts. She's not even human. She's not your child. Why risk everything? David closed his eyes. In his heart, another voice answered, "Because she asked. Because she called you Dad. Because you can't turn your back." He opened his eyes again and saw Lyra staring at him, tears brimming. She whispered, "You don't have to be my father. I just wanted someone to stay. Just once." David felt something break inside him. He reached forward and pulled her gently into his arms. She was light, too light, like a bird that hadn't eaten in days. "You're wrong," he said firmly, his voice shaking. "I don't have to be your father. I choose to be. Do you understand?" Lyra buried her face into his chest, sobbing quietly. For the first time since she tugged his shirt in that market, David said the words out loud. "You're my daughter now. And no one, no council, no guard, no monster is going to take you from me." The sound of her quiet crying filled the factory. Then slowly she calmed. Her small hands clung to his shirt and he felt her breathing steady. For a brief moment, the danger outside faded. In this broken corner of the city, something real had been born. A family, fragile but unshakable, but reality returned quickly. A loud crack echoed outside, the unmistakable sound of a blaster firing. Then another. Voices shouted in the distance. David stood, pulling Lyra up with him. His body was tired, but his choice was made. There was no going back. "Listen, Lyra," he said, kneeling so his eyes met hers. "They'll come again. And when they do, you can't be afraid. You're stronger than you think, stronger than they know." Her glowing eyes widened. "But what if they catch us?" David's voice hardened. "Then I fight until my last breath. Because that's what fathers do." She stared at him, her lips trembling. Then she nodded, determination flickering where fear had been. A shadow moved across the broken window. David pulled her deeper into the factory. The red glow of drones swept across the floor, searching. The council had unleashed a full hunt. David found an old maintenance hatch and pushed it open. A cold rush of air hit them from below. "Down we go," he said. Lyra hesitated. "Where does it lead?" "Doesn't matter," David answered. "As long as it takes us away." They climbed down into the darkness, the sound of guards crashing into the factory above them. The tunnels below were damp, filled with dripping pipes and the smell of rust. Their footsteps splashed in shallow water as they moved. The walls echoed with every sound, making David tense at each drip and creak. Finally, they stopped in a wide chamber where the pipes twisted like roots. David let Lyra rest on a stone ledge. She leaned against him, exhausted. For a moment, he looked up at the dark ceiling and let out a shaky breath. He had chosen. He was no longer just an engineer trying to survive. He was a father. And fathers don't run. Above, the muffled sound of boots echoed through the ruins. The hunt was tightening. David held Lyra close and whispered, "Whatever happens tomorrow, tonight you're safe. I promise," she whispered back, almost asleep. "Thank you." "Dad?" The word filled the chamber, warm and powerful, stronger than the cold city above. And David knew, no matter the cost, he would keep that promise. The tunnels gave them only one night of rest. By morning, the sound of armored boots echoed down the pipes. The council's soldiers were sweeping every level of the city. Drones buzzed above the grates, red lights scanning through cracks in the walls. There was no more running. David knew it. Lyra knew it too. They climbed out of the tunnels into the docks, where giant ships waited under the foggy sky. Engines roared, cranes moved cargo, and merchants shouted as they loaded supplies. The place was alive with noise and chaos, but above it all, David could see them. Black armored guards moving in from both sides, closing the trap. Lyra clung to his hand, her small face pale. "Dad, what do we do?" David's jaw tightened. He had no weapons, no army, no plan, but he had something stronger. He looked down at her glowing eyes and whispered, "We stand." The guards marched closer, forming a circle around them. The crowd of dock workers fell silent, watching. Everyone knew what was about to happen. The lead guard stepped forward, his red eyes glowing through the visor. His voice was sharp as broken glass. "Human, give us the girl." Lyra pressed against David's side, trembling. David's voice came steady, louder than he expected. "No." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some whispered in shock. Others gasped. A human saying no to the council's enforcers? Unthinkable. The guard's weapon hummed, charging with deadly energy. "You will die for her." David spread his arms, shielding Lyra. His chest rose with each heavy breath, but his voice stayed firm. "Then I die. But she stays with me. If she calls me Dad, then she's mine." The words cut through the silence like a blade. For a moment, even the guards seemed stunned. Lyra's small hand gripped his shirt tighter. Her lips trembled, but her voice rang out clear and strong. "He is my dad, I say it. I choose it." The silver lines on her skin flared bright, glowing so strongly that the entire dock lit up. The crowd gasped. The guards staggered back, shielding their eyes. David looked down at her, shocked. She wasn't just a frightened child anymore. She was shining, her father's gift burning through her. Her words carried weight, undeniable truth. One of the guards growled, but when he tried to step forward, his body froze. It was as if her words themselves had bound him. The crowd erupted in whispers. "Truth speaker?" "She's a truth speaker." Lyra's voice rose, trembling but filled with power. "My father died because he spoke truth. But I live. And I say this, he is my dad, no one can take me away." The glow grew brighter, pulsing through her veins. The guards stumbled, some dropping their weapons. Even the lead enforcer froze, unable to push forward. David wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steadying her. He whispered in her ear, "You're not cursed. You're a miracle." Her glowing eyes met his. For the first time, she truly believed it. The dock workers, who moments before had only watched in silence, began to step closer. A feathered merchant lowered his head in respect. A scaled worker raised his hand, pointing at the guards. Murmurs grew into voices, voices into shouts. "Leave them," someone cried. "She speaks truth," another shouted. "Council lies." The crowd surged. Workers, traders, even strangers who had never met Lyra pushed forward, standing between her and the guards. The enforcers hissed, their weapons crackling. But the weight of the people, the glow of Lyra's gift, and David's unshaken stance held them back. The lead guard growled one last order, then stepped back. One by one, the others followed. Slowly, they retreated into the fog, leaving the docks filled with shouting voices and raised fists. David held Lyra close, his chest pounding. The fight wasn't over, not forever. The council would not forget. But for now, they had won. Lyra leaned into him, exhausted but smiling faintly. "Dad," she whispered. "We did it." David kissed the top of her head. "No, you did it. You showed them who you are." She closed her eyes, resting against him. "I'm not alone anymore." "No," David said, holding her tighter. "You never will be." Above them, a transport ship lifted from the docks, its engines rumbling. David looked up at it and knew the future was uncertain. They were still fugitives, still hunted, but they weren't running alone anymore. For the first time in years, he felt purpose burning in his chest. Not just survival, not just work, something greater. He was a father, and he would fight for his daughter until the stars themselves burned out.